A crowded bus. A young man humiliates his mother in front of everyone, until a quiet military veteran steps in with a story that changes everything. What happened next left everyone stunned. The city bus was packed, every seat taken. People stood in the aisle, gripping metal poles to keep their balance. It was an ordinary late afternoon in Birmingham, Alabama. The air felt heavy with the smell of diesel and the steady murmur of small talk, a background noise everyone was used to. In one of the middle rows sat a young man in his early 20s. He had a sharp jawline and carried himself with clear arrogance. His voice cut through the bus's low hum. "How could you forget that, Mom?" "Seriously, it's embarrassing," he snapped, waving his hands in frustration. Next to him sat his mother, an older woman with silver hair and gentle, tired eyes. She fumbled with her purse strap, looking down to avoid the stares around them. "I'm sorry, Nathan," she whispered, barely loud enough to hear. "I thought I put it in the bag before we left." Nathan groaned loudly, tossing his head back as if the world itself was against him. "You always do this. It's like you can't keep track of anything. No wonder Dad got fed up with you." Gasps spread among nearby passengers. A woman shot him a disapproving look, and a man further back muttered under his breath. But still, no one spoke up, not yet. At the back of the bus sat a tall black man in a military uniform. His name tag read Gaines, though hardly anyone noticed. His presence was quiet yet strong. The medals on his chest hinted at years of service, but his face stayed calm and unreadable. Nathan's voice kept rising as he scolded his mother, this time about some forgotten grocery item. Gaines turned his head slightly, his sharp eyes watching closely. He didn't move, but his jaw tightened just a bit. The mother's hands trembled as she adjusted her glasses. Her cheeks turned red from shame. "Please, Nathan, not here. Let's talk about it later," she pleaded softly. "Talk about it later?" Nathan shot back, loud enough for the whole bus to hear. "You don't get it, do you? You ruin everything." The discomfort in the air grew heavier. Passengers exchanged worried glances. A teenage girl lifted her phone, pretending to scroll but aiming her camera at them instead. Everyone waited, hoping someone would do something. Anything. Gaines let out a quiet sigh, a sound so small yet strangely powerful. His eyes paused on the mother, then went back to Nathan. He leaned back a little, hands still resting calmly on his knees, but there was a quiet strength in his posture. The tension kept building. It felt like the whole bus was holding its breath, waiting to see who would speak up first. Nathan kept going, his voice sharper and meaner with each word. Passengers shifted uneasily in their seats, and the usual low chatter died away. The bus itself felt smaller, the air thicker with each cruel remark. "Can't you do anything right?" Nathan sneered, leaning closer to his mother. "You're so useless sometimes." She flinched but stayed silent, clutching her purse tighter like it was her only comfort. Her eyes stayed on the floor, lips pressed in a thin line. This was the first time she'd faced her son's anger, but being shamed in public hurt even more. Her shoulders slumped as if she wanted to disappear. A man near the front, dressed in business clothes, shifted awkwardly and looked back, caught between anger and hesitation. The woman beside him whispered, someone should say something. But no one did, not yet. At the back, Gaines shifted slightly in his seat. His dark, steady eyes stayed locked on Nathan, studying him closely. There was no anger in his look, just a calm, thoughtful focus. His silence seemed to fill the space around him, heavy and unspoken, as if he was waiting for exactly the right moment to step in. Nathan's voice cracked as he kept going, his anger starting to spiral out of control. "You know this is why Dad left. You've always been a mess," he spat. His words hit like a slap, loud enough for even the people at the far end of the bus to hear. The mother's face crumpled, and a single tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, hoping no one had seen. But of course, everyone had. A wave of discomfort spread through the bus. People who'd been pretending not to listen suddenly couldn't look away. The teenage girl recording the scene nudged her friend. "This is going to go viral," she whispered. Her friend shook her head, murmuring, "It's just sad." At the back, Gaines straightened in his seat, his hands, which had been resting calmly on his knees, now gripped the edge of the seat. His face stayed steady, but there was a new quiet string about him, a silent determination. Nathan opened his mouth to throw out another insult when, finally, a gentle but firm voice cut through the tension. "Young man." The voice belonged to an older woman, sitting a few rows ahead. She turned slightly in her seat, her eyes stern. "Don't you think you've said enough?" Nathan froze, surprised that someone had spoken up, his face twisted in annoyance. "This isn't your business, lady," he snapped. Before the argument could go further, Gaines stood up. His sheer presence made everyone on the bus turn to look. He was tall, his uniform neat and full of medals, and there was a calm authority in the way he carried himself. With slow, steady steps, he walked down the aisle. The bus grew so quiet that only the low hum of the engine could be heard. As Gaines got closer, Nathan seemed to shrink back into his seat, his earlier boldness fading under Gaines's gaze. The passengers watched, hearts pounding, knowing this was a moment someone would finally step in, though none of them could guess what Gaines would say next. Gaines stopped just a few feet away, his shadow falling over Nathan. He looked at Nathan, then turned his eyes to the elderly woman beside him, whose cheeks were streaked with tears. He exhaled slowly, then spoke. "I wasn't going to say anything," he began, his voice deep and calm, filled with quiet authority. "But sitting here and watching this, that's not something I can do." Nathan's defiance flared up for a second. "What? Are you going to lecture me now?" He shot back, though his voice trembled. Gaines ignored the tone and turned gently to the mother. He crouched a little to be at her eye level. "Ma'am," he said softly, "you deserve respect, especially from your own son." Though his words were gentle, they carried a weight that made everyone on the bus listen. Then Gaines straightened up and turned back to Nathan, his voice firm but not harsh. "You remind me of someone I used to know," he said, his gaze narrowing slightly. "Someone who thought there would always be time to say sorry." Nathan blinked, puzzled. "What are you talking about?" Gaines tilted his head, his face serious but calm. "I served 20 years in the military," he said quietly. "I've seen places you wouldn't imagine, done things that still keep me awake at night." His voice dropped even lower, so quiet that everyone leaned in just to hear. "But nothing haunts me more than the day I buried my mother." The bus seemed to stop breathing. Even the engine's hum faded into the background. "I was young, full of pride." Gaines continued, pain touching his voice. "I thought I knew more than the woman who raised me. She'd call to ask how I was, and I'd brush her off. 'I'm busy, Mom. I'll call you later.' But later never came." Nathan shifted in his seat, the anger on his face softening into something else, something close to shame or fear. "One day," Gaines said quietly, "I got the call. She was gone." He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper, but somehow stronger than ever. "Do you know what it feels like to stand over a coffin, wishing for just one more chance to say I'm sorry? To tell her, you mattered to me. I love you, but you can't because it's too late." The tension inside the bus felt crushing. Every passenger held their breath, eyes fixed on Gaines. The mother wiped her face with shaking hands, her lips pressed tight to keep back a sob. Gaines leaned in a bit, his tone firmer now. "Don't be the man who waits until it's too late. That regret, it will stay with you forever." Nathan's face flushed red, his lips parting as if to speak, but no words came out. His hands clenched the fabric of his jeans, and his head lowered, as though the weight of Gaines's words had sunk in. The bus stayed completely still, no one daring to move or even breathe. Then Nathan finally moved. His bravado had vanished, replaced by a quiet stillness. Slowly, he lifted his head and looked straight into Gaines's eyes. The defiance had faded from Nathan's face, leaving something raw and unguarded behind. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. He hesitated, swallowing hard. I didn't mean to hurt her." The words trembled in the air, thin and fragile. His mother's eyes widened in surprise. Her lips parted, but she stayed silent, her quiet filled with emotion. Gaines didn't move. His steady gaze stayed locked on Nathan. "Then say it," Gaines urged, his voice calm but firm. "Say what you're afraid to say." Nathan's jaw tightened for a moment, as if he might snap back. But then his shoulders dropped, the fight draining out of him. He turned toward his mother. His hand shook as he reached to touch her arm. She flinched slightly but didn't pull away. "I'm sorry, Mom," Nathan whispered, so softly it was barely there. "I've been so angry and I took it out on you. You didn't deserve that." Tears streamed down his mother's cheeks. She looked at him, her face softening. "Oh, Nathan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You're my son. I've always forgiven you, but hearing you say it means everything." The bus seemed to breathe out all at once. The heavy tension lifted. Some passengers shared quiet looks, eyes glossy with emotion. Even the teenage girl who had been filming lowered her phone, her smirk gone, replaced with something gentler. Nathan's apology hung in the air, but he wasn't finished. He turned to Gaines, his voice steadier than before. "Thank you," he said, the words carrying real honesty this time. "I didn't realize how badly I was taking her for granted. Your story, it got to me." Gaines nodded, his expression softening. "It's not easy to admit when you're wrong," he said. "But what matters most is what you do next. Words are only the start." Nathan looked down, shame still in his eyes. "I want to do better," he said quietly. "For her." The elderly woman placed her trembling hand over her son's. "We'll figure it out," she said, her voice filled with hope and love. Gaines stepped back, his tall frame relaxing a little. He glanced around the bus, meeting a few passengers' eyes. Some nodded silently, their faces showing respect. Just as it felt like the moment was ending, something unexpected happened. As the bus stopped at a red light, a voice from the back spoke up, surprising everyone. It was an older man near the emergency exit, someone no one had really noticed until then. He leaned forward, his voice gravelly but strong. "Young man," he called out to Nathan, "you've taken the first step. Don't stop now." Everyone turned to look at him. His weathered face spoke of many hard years. He adjusted his flat cap before continuing, his tone firm but gentle. "I lost my son a few years ago. We hadn't spoken in over a decade. Do you know what I'd give for just 5 minutes to tell him I love him? Don't waste the time you've got." Nathan's face flushed a deeper red, his eyes filling with tears he couldn't hold back. He looked at his mother, her hand still resting on his. For the first time in so long, there was no anger in her eyes, only love and understanding. Nathan looked around the bus, seeing all the strangers who had witnessed both his shame and his apology. Then he stood up, his voice trembling but stronger. "Come on, Mom," he said. "Let's get off here. I want to talk, really talk." The passengers quietly parted to let them through. Some offered soft smiles. Others gave small nods of support. As they stepped off the bus, a gentle wave of approval rippled through the crowd. Gaines watched them leave, his expression unreadable at first. But as the door shut behind them, a small, content smile appeared on his face. He went back to his seat, leaning back with quiet satisfaction. A few rows up, the teenage girl who had filmed everything paused, then hit delete. "Not everything needs to go online," she murmured to her friend, who nodded. The bus rolled on, and slowly the quiet chatter returned. But it wasn't the same. Passengers weren't just scrolling their phones or staring blankly out the window. They were thinking about family, forgiveness, and how little time we really have. As the bus neared Gaines' stop, the man next to him finally spoke, his voice low. "That was something back there," he said. "The way you handled it made me think. I haven't called my mom in weeks. I think I'll do that tonight." Gaines smiled faintly, standing as the bus slowed. "You should," he said softly. "One call can mean everything." He stepped off into the fading sunlight. Passengers watched him go, his quiet strength leaving a mark they wouldn't soon forget. This story reminds us that time with loved ones is precious. The words we speak, kind or cruel, matter more than we realize. Respect, humility, and gratitude are lessons worth learning before it's too late. If this story touched you, take a moment today to reach out to someone you love. Say the words you've been meaning to say. And if you want more stories that inspire and make you think, don't forget to subscribe, and share. Let's spread kindness together.